Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive into the world of AI. This week we've got a ton of exciting news to cover, so let's jump right in.
Looking forward to it.
All right, first up we've got some news from OpenAI. Their newest model, Orion, is creating some buzz, and its performance has people talking.
Yeah, Orion is definitely exceeding the capabilities of older models, but the improvements aren't as groundbreaking as we saw with, say, the jump from GPT-3 to GPT-4.
So not quite the quantum leap we've come to expect.
Exactly. And one theory is that it all comes down to data, or the lack thereof.
Ah, the fuel that keeps those AI engines running.
Precisely. These large language models, they're incredibly data hungry, and we might be reaching a point where the well of easily accessible, high-quality data is starting to dry up.
Makes sense. So how are they planning to address this potential data drought?
Well, one of the strategies OpenAI is looking into is the use of synthetic data. Basically, instead of relying solely on real-world data, they're using AI to generate entirely artificial data sets.
Whoa, hold on. So they're using AI to create data to train other AI.
Yep, exactly. Think of it like building a virtual world for their AI to learn in. It's a controlled environment where they can test different scenarios and fine-tune models with much more precision.
I can see how that would be useful, but it sounds incredibly complex.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges and advantages of this approach?
Well, on the plus side, synthetic data could offer developers greater control over the training process, and it may even help to address some of the inherent biases that we find in real-world data.
Right, real-world data is messy.
Totally. But of course, a major challenge is making sure that this synthetic data is truly representative of the complexity and nuance of the real world. It's a double-edged sword, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out for OpenAI.
Absolutely. All right, well, speaking of ambitious strategies, our next story takes us to Near Protocol, a blockchain platform that's making a splash in the world of open source AI.
They definitely are, and they've just announced their plan to build the largest open source AI model the world has ever seen. We're talking seriously massive.
Okay, color me intrigued. How massive are we talking?
A 1.4 trillion parameter model. To put that in perspective, it dwarfs even Meta's open source Llama model.
Wow, okay, that's a whole other level.
Right. And what's really fascinating is how Near Protocol is approaching this project. They're going the crowdsourced route.
Oh, wow, crowdsourced AI development.
Yeah.
That sounds fascinating, but also kind of chaotic. How does that even work?
They've set up something called the Near AI Research Hub, which is designed to bring together thousands of contributors to collaborate on building this behemoth of a model.
Thousands. That's wild.
Yeah, it's a pretty incredible undertaking.
So how do they manage such a large-scale collaborative project?
Well, they've implemented a tiered development process, starting with a more manageable 500 million parameter model.
Okay, so kind of like starting small and scaling up as they go.
Exactly. And as contributors demonstrate their skills, they can actually level up to work on increasingly complex and larger models.
So it's almost like a giant collaborative AI puzzle with contributors working together to unlock the next level.
Yeah, a great way to put it. And the really cool part is that there are financial incentives baked into the whole system.
Oh, really? Now we're talking. Tell me more.
So Near Protocol is using token sales to cover those massive compute costs that are just inherent to training these massive models. Then contributors get to share in the revenue generated by the model's usage.
It's like a profit-sharing system for the AI development community. That's pretty brilliant, actually.
It is. It really aligns everyone's incentives with the overall success of the project. And, the founders of Near Protocol aren't exactly strangers to the world of AI either.
No, fill me in.
Well, one of them was actually a co-author on that pivotal transformer research paper, the one that laid the foundation for models like ChatGPT.
Oh, wow. So they've got some serious street cred in the AI world.
They do, and the other founder actually worked at OpenAI.
Okay, well, that definitely adds a lot of weight to their ambitious plans.
It's going to be fascinating to see how the open source community rallies around this project and ultimately shapes the future of this massive model.
Agreed. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about a story that might seem a little out there at first, but it actually highlights some really important economic considerations tied to this whole AI boom we're experiencing. It involves Nvidia GPUs, which, as we all know, are in super high demand for AI development. And get this, .guano.
You heard that right, guano. The article we're diving into actually compares loans that are being secured by Nvidia GPUs today with loans that were secured by guano back in the 19th century.
Hold on, guano as in .bat droppings.
You got it. Bat droppings. I know it sounds strange, but bear with me.
I'm all ears.
So the collateral might be a little less pungent these days, but the underlying principle is actually quite similar.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. Explain it to me.
Both guano, back in the 19th century, and Nvidia GPUs today represent assets that saw a massive surge in value due to very specific market conditions.
Okay, so guano was the hot commodity back in the day, and now it's NVIDIA GPUs. Makes sense.
Precisely.
So let's talk about those NVIDIA GPUs. What makes them so valuable as collateral in the first place?
It all comes down to the explosion we've seen in AI development. These GPUs, they're the workhorses behind training and running those large language models.
Right, they're essential.
Absolutely. And as the demand for these AI chips continues to skyrocket, so too does their perceived value. And this has led to what some are calling neocloud companies.
Neo-cloud companies, that's a new one. What are those exactly?
Think of them as this new breed of cloud computing companies that are heavily, and I mean heavily, invested in AI infrastructure.
So they're basically all in on AI.
Exactly. And a major part of their strategy involves using their stockpiles of, you guessed it, NVIDIA GPUs as collateral for loans.
That's like their golden ticket to secure funding.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But the article does raise some concerns about this whole practice.
Oh, red flags.
Yeah, a few.
Like what?
Well, one thing to remember is that GPUs, just like any other technology, are susceptible to depreciation.
Right, what's cutting edge today is obsolete tomorrow.
Exactly. And as newer, faster, more efficient models hit the market and supply increases, the value of those GPUs being used as collateral could plummet, and that could put lenders in a very risky position.
So it's almost like building a house of cards on a foundation that could crumble at any moment.
That's a good analogy. The article also highlights the potential for valuation inflation. You see, Nvidia is actually investing in some of these neocloud companies, and those companies then turn around and use those investments to buy more Nvidia chips.
So it's a bit of a self-perpetuating cycle.
It is, and this cycle could lead to an artificially inflated market for these GPUs.
So the concern is that the value of these GPUs isn't really what it seems. And what happens if this whole bubble bursts?
We could see a pretty significant market correction, which would impact not just the neocloud companies, but the broader AI industry as a whole.
I see. So this seemingly bizarre comparison between GPUs and guano is actually a really insightful way to think about the economic forces that are shaping the AI landscape.
It is, and the author is ultimately urging caution, emphasizing the need for greater transparency in these financial arrangements.
Sounds like wise advice. Now, for our final story in this segment, let's dive into the always interesting and often contentious world of AI regulation. We've got A16's AMBVC Martin Casado weighing in on current attempts to regulate AI, and let's just say he's not mincing words.
Nope, he's definitely got some strong opinions on this.
I've heard that. So what's his main argument?
Well, in a nutshell, Casado believes that lawmakers are getting way too caught up in those hypothetical doomsday scenarios involving superintelligent AI, the ones that dominate the headlines.
Right, the robots taking over the world kind of thing.
Exactly. And he argues that this fear-driven approach is actually leading to impractical and potentially even harmful regulations.
Interesting. So he's basically saying we're letting science fiction dictate policy instead of focusing on the actual problems that are happening right now.
Exactly. And a perfect example of this disconnect between those hypothetical threats and real-world concerns is California's recently vetoed AI governance law.
Oh, right. The one with the kill switch.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, that whole kill switch idea was pretty controversial. I mean, how do you even define what constitutes a dangerous AI in the first place?
Well, that's the problem. It's incredibly subjective and open to all sorts of bias.
I can only imagine.
Casado argues that this kind of approach is not only impractical, but it's based on such vague language that it could really stifle innovation in the field.
Yeah, too much uncertainty can be paralyzing for developers and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And Casado believes that we already have regulatory frameworks in place that are perfectly capable of addressing AI-specific concerns.
So instead of creating entirely new regulations for AI, we should be focusing on adapting existing laws to these new challenges.
That's his argument. Think about it. We already have laws against fraud, discrimination, harmful content, and all of those can be applied to AI systems just as they can be to any other technology.
It's a much more pragmatic approach.
Yeah, it cuts through all the hype and fear-mongering and focuses on what actually matters. Casado is not saying that we should ignore the potential risks of AI, but rather that we should prioritize those real-world issues over those hypothetical doomsday scenarios.
It makes a lot of sense. He's advocating for a more level-headed approach to AI regulation.
Precisely. And he even goes a step further, arguing that these attempts to overregulate AI are actually distracting us from tackling some of the root problems we're already grappling with from technologies like social media.
So he's saying we haven't even figured out how to effectively regulate social media, and now we're jumping headfirst into trying to regulate AI.
That's exactly his
It's a
point.
bold statement.
Right. He argues that the issues we see with social media, like the spread of misinformation, the erosion of privacy, those aren't really inherent to the technology itself.
So it's not the technology, it's how it's being used.
Right. They stem from these business models and these algorithms that prioritize engagement and profit over the well-being of society.
Okay, I see his point.
So instead of trying to regulate AI as this big monolithic entity, we should be focusing on holding the companies and the individuals who are actually responsible for those harmful applications accountable.
It makes sense.
Regulate the behavior, not the technology itself.
I like that. It's a really thought-provoking perspective that I think challenges all of us to move beyond those knee-jerk reactions and really engage in more nuanced, more thoughtful discussions about the role of AI in our society.
And with AI continuing to evolve at this breakneck speed, having those conversations is more important now than ever before.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's interesting because he points to the fact that we're not even really doing a great job of regulating the technologies that are already having these massive impacts on our lives.
Right. It's like we're trying to run before we can walk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about social media.
Oh, yeah, Exhibit A.
Right. It's just
Yeah.
a prime example. We haven't even figured out how to regulate social media effectively, and now we're jumping headfirst into trying to regulate AI.
So he sees this as a bit of a distraction.
He does. He really does. He's basically saying, look, we need to address the problems we already have before we start creating new ones. He points out that the issues we see with social media, the spread of misinformation, the erosion of privacy, all of that, it's not really inherent to the technology itself.
It's not like social media is inherently evil.
Right, exactly.
Mm.
It's the way it's being used, the business models, those algorithms that prioritize engagement and profit over, the well-being of society that are the real problem.
It's like any tool that can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly. And so his argument is that instead of trying to regulate AI as this big, scary monster, we should be focusing on holding the companies and individuals who are actually responsible for those harmful applications accountable.
So regulate the behavior, not the technology itself.
Exactly. It's a really powerful idea and one that I think is worth considering. I mean, it forces us to move beyond those knee-jerk reactions and really engage in these more nuanced, more meaningful conversations about, the role of AI in our society.
It's a good reminder that AI is a tool. And like any tool, it's all about how we use it.
Exactly. And those choices we make about how we use AI, they're going to have huge consequences.
No doubt about it.
Mm.
And as AI continues to evolve at this incredible pace, having those conversations about ethics and responsibility is more important than ever.
It really is. And, I think it's encouraging to see these different perspectives emerging. We've
Sure.
got OpenAI pushing the boundaries with these massive language models. Then we've got Near Protocol embracing this community-driven approach to development. And then we've got people like Martin Casado challenging us to think critically about how we approach regulation. It's a really exciting time to be following this field.
It is.
Yeah.
And with all this rapid development and innovation happening, I think it's easy to get caught up in the hype, but it's also crucial that we step back and ask those tough questions about where we're headed and what kind of future we want to build with AI.
Absolutely. The choices we make today are going to shape the AI landscape for years to come.
And as we wrap up our deep dive this week, we want to encourage you to keep those conversations going.
Right. Dive deeper into the sources we talked about, explore those different perspectives, and most importantly, form your own opinions.
The future of AI is being shaped right now, and it's up to all of us to decide what that future looks like.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of AI.